Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. And yes, today I'm in conversation with the very friendly Miss Kavita Kane. She is a mythological fiction writer. Her books are extremely famous. She writes books based on Indian mythology. I'd like to read out a few of her works. Karna's wife, Sita's sister, Menika's choice, Lanka's princess, Ahilya's awakening, oof, and the list can go on. So I'll be talking to her today about her books and about the topic of Indian mythology. Come, let us talk. Welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for the interview. I am very grateful and really feel very lucky to be able to talk to you.
Thank you very much, and it's lovely seeing you. Hi to you, hi to everyone, and yes, a very good evening.
Yeah. So my first question is, why are your books so female centric? Any particular reason?
Actually, it started by default because when I started on Karna's Wife, my debut book, it was I wanted to tell his story, but I didn't want him to tell his story.
Hmm.
So my choice was between his mother and his wife, and I opted for Urvi because I think she gave a larger scale to the character and more opportunities in the sense that she had it's a fictitious character, and secondly, as a wife, she could play not just his wife, his partner, his lover, but also his friend, guide, his conscience, and eventually his sutradhar who is telling his story. So in a way, there are moments when she is biased because she is his wife. In That is why all the emotional outbursts are essentially because of a certain wise fidelity towards her husband. And in contrast, there are passages of disappointment where she realizes he's not the man whom she thought he was. So I think that's sort of a paradox, and also what actually happens in a husband-wife relationship. It has, if there's love and loyalty, there's also disappointments and sorrow. So I think that was what their relationship was about. And to marry an outcast, the title was also the outcast queen. I mean, she is the queen of an outcast. So she also the fall in her social status also. I mean, how she has to suffer it. So it was a statement on it was a sort of a social critique also. And when I think the success of Karna's wife made me revert to Urmila, who was initially my first choice to write a book. But when I did my research, there was absolutely nothing about her, just 3 lines, and I really didn't have it in me to write a book on her, because I said, how am I supposed to write a book? But after writing about Urvi and creating a fictitious character, I think I was a little more confident to deal with Urmila and write her story and the life in the palace. And that's how, while doing the research for Sita's sister, I stumbled upon Menka. I mean, while doing researching on Vishwamitra, and her character fascinated me. And then actually I realized that they were entire there's a huge variety, vastness of women characters, which we really don't know of. We know in fact, we just know names. I mean, most of the names, in fact, we go see around us, whether it's Saranya and Sanjana and all. They are important women characters. We don't even know who they are. So, that is when I realized that, yes, I think the women are, yes, very fascinating. I'm quite sure even the men will agree here. But more than that, I realized they were not only minor characters, they were largely neglected. They were largely forgotten, they were largely overlooked. And that's how I think it just sort of became a pattern. Is the way I started thinking while even doing research, coming across an interesting woman character who could grip me, keep my interest sustained for to write 300 page book on her. So I think that's how. And then I said, because they are marginalized, we really don't see them at all. It's and be making them visible figures, making them no longer voiceless figures. I think I was just telling the story.
Okay. Ma'am, you wrote Ramayan through Urmila and Supnaka's point of view and Mahabharata through Urvi's point of view. How did you do your research in about these less known characters?
How did I didn't catch the last
I
part.
said, how did you do your research on these characters who are so less known?
Exactly. There was, as I mentioned earlier, there was nothing much on the character themselves, like whether it's Urmila, especially Urmila, or even later, even Surpanaka. I mean, Surpanaka is such a huge character. She's a female antagonist of the second half of the Ramayana. But if you actually do research, there's nothing much on her.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense, besides these two episodes where her nose gets cut off, and the second when she goes to Ravan complaining about. So after that, there's no mention of her. So it was like it was not actually talking about the Ramayana through the eyes. It is telling their story, and you see the other point of view. What I was trying to do, the research was largely again through the bigger characters. Like let me be specific. For Urmila, it was completely on Sita. Sita, as she as Sita's sister. Then through Lakshman, through the events what are happening around them. And again, after a point, Sita and Lakshman events really don't affect her in the sense physically, because physically they are geographically they are away from her. So it was there. I had to again base my character Urmila sort of flesh her out through Kaikeyi, because what happened in the palace we really don't know. But the repercussions what Kaikeyi also must have felt after being rejected by her own son. So I think all these the bigger character and the events which were around these bigger characters sort of helped me flesh out Urmila, like, or that she's Janak's daughter. Now Janak himself was a huge character in the sense he was one of those rare Rajrishis. He was a scholarly king. He was a philosopher king who used to have Upanishads, conferences of Upanishads, philosophical conferences in his court. It is definitely mentioned, and that's how the part of the Upanishads were compiled. So, to be the daughter of such a man, he was the father of two girls, and he was one of those rare kings who never really aspired for a son. So, being the father, I think very well you can call him the first feminist. I would definitely say that. And to be the daughter of such a man, and that's how I think I largely portrayed her as literally a Janak's daughter. So that was the research. And again, for Surpanaka, it was the same thing. There were three important, like Ravan, Kumbhakarna, and Vibhishan were there. And there were a lot of dramatic events happening around her. She was one of the reasons why they started. And yes, the research was completely as Ravan's sister, as Kumbhakarna's sister, Vibhishan's sister, as the foil to Sita, as completely as the antagonist vis-a-vis Ram and Lakshman. And that thread, there was a lot of here. I think more than research, also there was the folklore surrounding all the which are the present in both the epics. I mean, the folklore, they sort of humanize all these characters. And one of the stories was that how she used Ram and Lakshman to fight her own war against Ravan. Now that was such a dramatic discovery for me, because it changes the whole story. And why would she want to kill her brother or hate her brother so much? So how did that love turn sort of curdle into hate? So it was, yes. So that is why I think Ravan is also an extremely important character in Lanka's Princess, because I wouldn't have been able to sort of chalk out Surpanaka at all without Ravan. So like Urmila, I could not, without Lakshmana or Sita, I could not have. So the research is essentially through these big characters.
Ma'am, I read your interview. I would like to read out few lines. It said, mythology is about how you interpret the truth. You cannot get to the truth without rereading it, and more importantly, peeling away the layers. As a genre, it is demanding because it makes the reader think and not judge. Ma'am, I read these lines from, as I said in one of your interviews. If every person has a different perspective to the truth, then how will we know what is the real truth?
See, I think more than the truth is how we handle the truth. The whole idea, I think the key line was you should not judge. Even if you know the truth, whatever truth you have drawn, it could be, again, truth is also is very arbitrary. Whatever truth you have drawn, what you think is true, you do not sit on the judgment chair, and then I think that is very important, because how we handle that truth is also equally important. I mean, it's if a story is being told to you and you literally take the story as what it is, if you think that is the truth, how are you handling it? Instead of judging them, instead of saying, oh, she's black and white, good and evil. These are very simple stereotypes which it's very easy to do. But the thing is reading between the lines, because that's what mythology is about. It's a series of, it's an extended metaphor in the end. So what you see through it, what is Ahilya trying to say? What is a Menka trying to say? What is a Surpadaka trying to say? Or an Urmila trying to say? That is what is it. She's telling her story. And what do you learn and glean from that story? That is without any judgmental bias, without prejudice, without ignorance. I think that is very important, because in the end, the interpretation of mythology especially depends completely on the interpretation of the reader. So that interpretation, I think, whatever it is, as long as it is not limited, myopic, and prejudiced, I think it's fine.
Some mythological stories in India are more practiced as a term of a religion, in a religious routine way. But foreigners who come to India, they adapt to this philosophy as a philosophy and not as a religion. But Indians take it more as a religion. Why is it? What is the reason behind it?
Because it's a religion. I mean, because it depends on your point of view. In the sense, if you, that's what I said. Each of these stories have huge philosophical depth. If you see the philosophy behind it, I think. But then that becomes a point of view. You have to see it accordingly. If you're going to see it as a religious text, no. But if you see it as a spiritual text, yes, it makes a difference. So I think, because I definitely do not try to mix religion in my interpretation, because again, religion is extremely. I think it's just a tool employed by the powerful to but I'm more interested in the spiritual and the philosophical side, because that's what I think the foreigners actually see the depth of it, the richness of it, the layered identity of our text. I mean, each time you read a story or a character or any of the whole epic, each time you come up with a new revelation, new discovery, and you're amazed at the, it's just incredible. I mean, if you actually read the epic, it is an inexhaustible read. It is an inexhaustible source, and I think it sort of includes all emotions, all experiences, all dilemmas. What do you say? All the psychological issues, everything you take. I mean, it's so modern that way. I mean, when you're talking about taking the analysis of any character, it is also not only it's also extremely psychological. We don't even, how could they even sort of think of such a character? And none of the characters, however small, are repetitive. In the sense, you will not say, oh, this character reminds me of that. Because each one is unique, as you know. So, and imagine having so many characters in this epic, and each of them are. Even the villains, not one villain is like the other. It's not so everyone has become all are tarnished black. No, I think the greys are beautiful, deep, and extremely. They are extremely expressive. They are telling you each shade is telling a story.
Last question I have: you have about various characters. Which is your favorite, if you had to choose one, and why?
Favorite from my books,
from your books.
No, actually, that's what. There's no such favorite, because I think each book, there's a reason why I write that book, because that character has completely gripped me. Because there is a certain. I want to tell something about that character. So at that particular point and later in life, that character remains my favorite, because it sort of haunts you. It becomes it's powerfully haunting for me, and I can very well say they are like my babies. But more than that, it is there is a reason why I molded them that way, why I created them. It's not, they are not my characters, for they are borrowed characters, but the way I fleshed them out. So there is a certain personal relationship you have with those characters, not only that particular protagonist, but the other characters around. So I wouldn't say anyone is my favorite. Each one of them, I think, helped me evolve as an author, also as a writer, as a thinker, and I think, yes, I have a special relationship with each one of them. So I won't say favorite would be There are different reasons why I sort of selected them. Different reasons why I like them, why I respect them.
Well, any
So
you really felt very strongly for, or any one of them, or all are on the same.
no. I'm not saying they're on the same level, definitely. But there is the different reasons are equally powerful in the sense. Let's start with the most negative of it. Let's say Surpanaka. Surpanaka, since she has been so caricaturized, I was more interested because, as I said, she was the sister of these three brothers. She was Lanka's princess. We never see her as a Lanka's princess. We actually see her as she is the antagonist who sort of, because of her, the second half of the Ramayana happens, and it sort of, she pushes the plot forward. But what I was trying to tell her story in the sense that such a complicated, complex girl, from a girl, she becomes that woman, and that evil woman whom she is tagged as. Why did she become evil? I think that was, and I think what I have about Surpanaka is, I think it was the most difficult story for me to write because to think on those lines, to think of revenge, to think of all the negative emotions, you have to live her life also. So it becomes also emotionally draining for the author. So Surpanaka, yes, was extremely emotionally exhausting. So was Satyavati. Satyavati, to see, to be relentless at so I think each one there is a reason. Urmila, of course, Urmila, her story of loneliness is so heart wrenching. I mean, what she did with her loneliness, and it's heartbreaking. I mean, if you actually see her story, so I think each one there is a reason why there is an emotional connect. So, or Menka, I mean Menka, the fact that she had to give away two of her daughters. I mean, as for a mother, I think that is an extremely, not only a difficult thing to do, but you have to kill yourself, a part of yourself to do that. So who were these characters? So that's what I said. They are definitely very, very strong emotional connections I have with these characters. That's why. Or even an Ahilya. I mean, Ahilya, I think, is the story of every other girl who has certain ambitions and desires, who falls in love, and I think her entire priorities change, and how she sort of gets swept away by the tide of her own emotions, and if you call it a moment of weakness or whatever, again, there was no moral judgment. It was how she faces that decision which she made. So I think there is no favorite, because I think all of them went through a lot of, a gamut of emotions, a gamut of personal strife, and no, I really cannot say, because I think when I see Urvi, yes, very strongly, because since I created her, there is a certain soft corner because I created her. I had to create her because I did not want to corrupt the image of Vrushali at all. So yes, there is a soft corner because she was the first character. So it was my debut book, and I think she was actually answering all the questions which we always have about the Mahabharata. So yeah, there is a soft corner for everyone. For every all the six ones, I really cannot say that. It's not being a diplomatic. It's a very honest answer. I cannot say. Urmila, again, both the whole thing was fascinating because they were sisters, and we all sisters, a lot of girls in our family. So this whole girl thing, the sisterhood, the concept of sisterhood was very strong. So there are different reasons, they are different, but yes, I love them. I enjoyed writing all my books, and I hope the readers also enjoy reading them. But yeah, there is a lot of not just words and intellect. You are emotionally connected with these characters, so you love them. It's like, I think Satyavati was difficult also because she was not a very likable character. Eventually, I remember so many people, oh, no, but she's not nice. I said, no, she's not supposed to be nice, or she's supposed to be bad, or I don't want my characters to be likable. I just want them to be, I'm just telling their story. So what they do, these people, these women have gone through. So in the process, she can turn out to be an unlikable character, but then she is what she is.
Ma'am, thank you so much for the interview, and really, I had a wonderful time. Ma'am, thank you so much. So, guys, we were in conversation with Miss Kavita Kane. I had a lovely time with her. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You have any questions, you can email me on my email address given below. And yes, do remember, I post in videos 4 times a week. Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. The time is 7:30 p.m. Do tune in. See you soon. Bye. And don't forget to subscribe. Bye. Take care.